Coming up on the Wheelhouse Retirement Show, investors nearing retirement are often aware that certain aspects of their portfolio should change before entering the distribution phase of their financial life. But when things are going well in their portfolio, there's little desire to make changes. On today's show, we'll discuss how your past experiences can affect your future decision-making in retirement. Also, getting ready for retirement and have accounts all over the place? Well, the team talks about the right time to consolidate those assets into a more cohesive plan. And later on the show, Rishi is going to be discussing donor-advised funds and how this investment strategy may be beneficial for your retirement tax strategy. That's all today and more on this edition of the Wheelhouse Retirement Show. It starts right now.
Retirement is more than a destination. It's a journey that starts with a dream, a vision for the way you want to live, recharge, and give back. To get there, you need a plan to make your retirement dreams come true. Now, in its fourth season, the Wheelhouse Retirement Show gives you the strategies you need to plan your ideal retirement. From income planning and wealth management to strategies for taxes, healthcare, and leaving a legacy, Rishi Ghosh and the experienced team at Wheelhouse Advisory Group provide one-stop modern solutions for your journey to and through retirement. With 3 locations, it's your go-to solution for all things retirement. This is the Wheelhouse Retirement Show.
Welcome to the Wheelhouse Retirement Show. I'm Amy Sharp, and joining me now, Rishi Ghosh and Andrew Breesacker with Wheelhouse Advisory Group. And it's good to be back with both of you gentlemen. Actually, first time for you, Andrew, so welcome to our show. I know that so many individuals, families at Wheelhouse have known you for many years, but this is your first time on our show. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's, first of all, Andrew Breesacker, and if you can see, it's pronounced nothing like it's spelled. So it's pronounced Bree like the cheese, soccer like the sport.
Okay.
The night I met my wife, Kelly, I gave her that corny line, for lack of a better term, and she came back to me and said, "I think you mean Bree like the cheese, soccer like the ball." And I looked at her a little puzzled, and she said, "Because you're a cheese ball."
Oh,
and so
good one.
It was love. We've been together now 16 years. We have 2 beautiful daughters, Winnie and Zoe. You can see them up on the screen. We live in Waterloo, Illinois, a small town most people are familiar with in the St. Louis area. My wife is a teacher in that school district, and I really know a lot of people throughout the metro east side of the St. Louis area. I have 2 brothers that live in Edwardsville, a brother who lives in Columbia, Illinois, and both of my parents grew up in Belleville, Illinois. So very ingrained. Rishi and Anthony and the team give me grief that everybody on the Illinois side knows somebody I'm related to most of the time.
I knew that was going to come up. That's fantastic. Your family is beautiful, and we're so happy to have you a part of this show. I know the team at Wheelhouse is happy to have you.
Very glad to be here.
As well. Okay, well, let's get right into it. We've got an important subject on the show today about how retirement planning is mental versus financial. Tell us what this means, Rishi.
You know, Amy, our clients, I've said it for years, they're just unbelievable savers. But when they come to us and ask for help to help them transition from the growth phase of their life, or as we call it, the accumulation phase of their life, into this next planning phase, we often say that, finance is 49% financial, 50% mental, so that's 99%, and then 1% dumb luck. And obviously, if our dumb luck runs out, it is what it is. We'll figure out how to plan around that. But the reason why we say it's actually more mental than financials is because our clients are moving from the saving phase of their life, right? Our clients, whether they made great money or great money in their terms, right? They save, they live within their means, they put money away. But now we're talking about transitioning them from something they've been so used to doing for 30, 35 years to accumulate this nest egg and get to this lump sum of money, to now teaching them how to preserve that lump sum, how to spend that lump sum, how to draw a strategic income plan off that lump sum. Our favorite part is a tax strategy around that lump sum. And oftentimes, they utilize their past to help them make decisions on what to do in the future. And that's where we see a little bit of a divide that we have to get over as we educate them on this next phase of their life.
Okay, so tell us, Andrew, what are maybe some of the examples of bias that you see from potential retirees?
Yeah, I think it's best first to kind of define what bias is. And bias is a disproportionate weight in favor of or against a particular idea or thing. And many times, as Rishi said, this can cause emotional decision making, and we want to make sure that those are based in fact. So let's start with first talking about one of the biggest examples we see. And in the day and age we live in where there's no lack of information, right or wrong, confirmation bias is one of the biggest things we see. Confirmation bias is where investors tend to gravitate towards information that reconfirms their already preconceived notions about things. And that leads to them also kind of ignoring things that are to the contrary that they may need to know in making good decisions. You know, we live in a world where we have a nonstop news cycle with so many cable news networks. We also have, in the last 10 to 15 years, have had social media emergence and YouTube, all of these things. It's really easy to get kind of lost in the woods and not really find the right information. So an example of people acting upon confirmation bias may be many investors or retirees really, as they're nearing retirement, they have parents that maybe were children of the Great Depression, right? And so they've always been told, don't invest in the stock market, right? You're only going to lose money. And they tend to get really risk averse and go look for those type of analysts that are constantly doomsdayers and telling them, don't invest in growth, all of those things. Now, we know in retirement, you do need to be taking risk off the table, but you also need to make sure you're keeping up with inflation. And so sometimes if you go too safe, you may also be missing out on keeping up with inflation. The opposite can also be true as an example too, where you have many retirees that have an affinity towards a particular stock or company, and they're only going to go out and find out things that reaffirm that that company is going to do well, when they may be ignoring some of the risk or some of the warning signs that other information may present to them.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. Let's take it one by one for our viewers and for me.
So for us, really, the idea behind talking about these different biases has nothing to do with if you have any of these biases in your portfolio or in your current mental planning, that it's a problem. It's strictly to do with being proactive in a portfolio. Oftentimes, like our second bias here, which is kind of what we call overconfidence familiarity, right? Oftentimes, let's just say we'll have a client come to us from the oil and gas sector of life, right? For 30, 35 years, they've worked in the oil and gas sector, which means oftentimes they've accumulated stock within some of these known companies, and these stocks may pay consistent dividends. So their idea is these stocks may have worked for 30 or 35 years, and I'm saying there's nothing wrong with the oil and gas sector, but as they move into this next phase, now that they have to draw income, now that they want to think about Roth conversions, their mindset is to stay with certain sectors. As we know, in this day and age, technology is booming, right? Many, many good companies are growing by double digits year over year. They have fluctuations, but they're high flyers. And oftentimes, a lot of people want to stick with those high flyers, and there's nothing wrong with that in your plan. But if you're weighting your entire portfolio towards one subsector just because it's doing very, very well and you're familiar with it, you might not be thinking about the other possible bumps that may happen in your retirement.
Lots of great information. I know we are going to continue this conversation, so stick around, gentlemen. Up next, we will continue to talk about the biases that investors face as they transition into retirement. Plus, later, Rishi explains an investment strategy known as a donor-advised fund that may help your portfolio become more tax efficient. That's coming up later in this week's Tip of the Week when the Wheelhouse Retirement Show continues. Stay tuned.
Did you know taxes could be your biggest expense in retirement? No one can avoid taxes completely, but with the right strategies in place, you could potentially reduce your tax bill in retirement. Having a plan to help protect your retirement savings from higher tax could be more money in your pocket and less to the IRS. At Wheelhouse Advisor Group, helping people like you minimize your taxes in retirement is something we are truly passionate about. Call us today to learn about ways to possibly lower your taxes in the future.
Welcome back to the Wheelhouse Retirement Show. Here today with Rishi and Andrew, helping our viewers who are looking to transition their portfolio from pre-retirement to retirement. And let's hop right back into our topic. We've been going through several of the most common types of biases. We've gone through two already. What's next?
Once again, Amy, the reason why we're going through these different biases is because we're helping people transition not just their financial situation, but also their mental situation from the accumulation phase of life into this next phase of life known as retiring. And this retirement. So this third bullet here is really anchoring. And I know myself as a financial advisor, I often find myself in this type of bias. And to put it in layman's terms, anchoring is essentially like fixating on a certain price for a stock. We bought a stock at 100, it's now at 200, right? We don't want to sell it too quickly, right? Just in case it goes higher, but then it comes back down to 175, and then we fixate that. I don't want to sell until it gets back to 200. Well, it might get back to 200 quickly, it might take many, many years, or it may continue to go down or decline during that time frame. So we just want to make sure that we make proactive decisions with all of our plans, because oftentimes in retirement, many decisions are irrevocable. And if we continue to ride a stock, let's just say lower and lower and lower, and there's nothing wrong with stocks, they go up and down like bonds, we want to make sure that we have a good plan for every position in our portfolio.
Andrew, I know this next one on the list is one that you've really talked about for years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's called self-attribution bias. What self-attribution bias is actually where investors tend to give themselves credit for the good things that happen in their portfolio while ignoring some things or providing excuses for things that maybe went wrong in their portfolio. Right? So many times we all have that friend, right, that we know gambles on the weekends. And obviously gambling isn't investing. But they tend to tell us when they have that really good weekend, that once in a blue moon, hit it big type of event. But we know that they've been going every weekend for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and they've been losing money in those, right? So the same principle can be applicable to investors, right? They tend to look at their investments and see the good things, whereas they blame the bad things on maybe, oh, that was when I was with that one advisor who gave me bad advice, or that was, I listened to my buddy at work for that particular stock pick. And they don't look at that really over the long haul. Things really average out. So we do know a lot of good stock pickers and work with a lot of good stock pickers, but many times kind of identifying when's the time to sell or noticing that really you're averaging out to what essentially the market is giving you is really what you need to be aware of when you're making those investment decisions.
And this last point that we're going to cover is one that I think seems like a lot of our viewers could really relate to.
You know, especially as Andrew mentioned, the social media generation, the online generation, AI is taking over the world, it seems like, good and bad, right? But that's really hindsight and herding. And I think a lot of people know about herding, which is when you hear from other people that I'm buying this stock, or you're out on the golf course and all your golf buddies, mine included, right? They say, this is the position you need to get in, this is the position you got to get out of, and everyone wants to kind of filter in, right? A lot of people know about the meme stocks out there that were driven by the internet age of what to buy, and got a lot of novice investors in there, which, as Andrew mentioned, kind of like gambling, right? You always hear about the wins, but a lot of people lost their nest eggs as well. So the idea here is to not always follow the crowds, and that's not a problem, but we have to remember your individual situation. Just because your best friend, who may be your lifelong golf buddy, maybe his situation states that he can take some sort of risk or less risk than you have, right? Or just because one analyst from Wall Street says this is a good stock, I promise you I could probably find other analysts that say it's not a good stock. Understanding your individual situation, but getting away from that hindsight bias of, oh, I wish I got into this, right? If we all could do stuff based on hindsight, we would be the richest people in the world. So the idea is build a tailored plan towards what you and your family need and what your goals are, and alleviate some of these biases, and you'll have a successful retirement.
This is such an interesting topic, and I just have to believe that so many of our viewers have faced some of these emotional decisions in their retirement and have to really think about it. What should our takeaway from this be, Andrew, as we look at all of these biases?
Yeah, I think the main thing is self-awareness of these biases, right? Many times trusting your gut is a good thing, but you need to trust but verify, right? You need to make sure that these decisions you're making aren't affected by emotions outside of that. And that's why we try to do full retirement planning at Wheelhouse. All of our clients that come on board with Wheelhouse are going to get 2 documents that help them understand the long-term plan, the first of which is going to be our retirement analyzer. That's where we give the blueprint for the long term for your retirement, where we're going to weigh out the different risks. How do we protect against inflation? How do we protect against stock market risk? How do we protect against taxes or legislative risk? All of those things. So we project that out in the long term. But then we also do what's called our retirement navigator. And this is what tells us over the next 365 days, what type of changes do we need to make in our portfolio to stay on top of our tax plan, to stay on top of how much risk we're taking. if markets are up, it's time to take some profits off the table and have that discipline, not let that emotion of, oh, the market's going up and it's going to go up forever. Having these types of things in place really gives us that plan and make sure that we eliminate as much as we can. You can't take emotions all out of everything, but it's going to eliminate as much as we can of the emotions of that decision making, not letting that bias hinder what our future plan and outlook is going to be.
We truly believe, Amy, by having both of these documents, the Retirement Analyzer is the long-term blueprint, the Retirement Navigator is really the short-term 365-day plan, having the combination of those included in your total retirement plan, your plan that encompasses investment strategy, tax strategies, estate planning strategies, will help you have not just a successful retirement, but very honestly, a very boring retirement. Anthony from the firm says it all the time, right? Let investments be boring, life should be fun, and that is what we believe in.
All right, great information. Thank you so much, guys. A lot of solid information for our viewers today. Coming up after the break, Rishi will walk us through an investment known as a donor-advised fund. It may be very beneficial strategy in your retirement, and that's next in our planning tip of the week.
Have you thought about your plan for long-term care? Do you need a policy to pay for it, or can you self-insure? If you have questions about long-term care planning and all the options available to you, you're not alone. I'm Lauren Ferraro, and my team at Wheelhouse Advisory Group can help you create a plan to meet your personal needs and protect your hard-earned assets. If you are confused or concerned about planning for long-term care, call us today to learn how to steer your future in the right direction.
Hi, I'm Rishi Ghosh with the Planning Tip of the Week. On this Planning Tip of the Week, we are going to be talking about an investment strategy that allows you to receive an immediate tax benefit while also helping you hit your philanthropic goals, called a donor-advised fund, or DAF. A donor-advised fund is a philanthropic vehicle that allows donors to make charitable contributions, receive an immediate tax benefit, and then recommend grants from the fund over time. Essentially, it is like a charitable investment account for the sole purpose of supporting charitable organizations you care about. It is designed to invest, grow, and give assets to charities for meaningful and lasting impact. This giving option has seen a significant rise in popularity as more baby boomers enter retirement. As charitable need has intensified in recent years, driven by the COVID pandemic, widespread disaster conflicts, and economic instability around the world, donors are increasingly turning to DAFs to help them respond to crisis while staying committed to their broader retirement goals. The first donor-advised fund was created in the 1930s. Though donor-advised funds were not recognized formally in the code until the Pension Protection Act of 2006, in the 1990s, donor-advised funds began to grow in visibility and popularity, and today they account for one of the most popular philanthropic giving vehicles. Grants from donor-advised funds account for more than 10% of all giving in the United States. When you contribute to a DAF, you are generally eligible to make an immediate tax deduction for the contribution, but the funds can be granted out to the charities over a period that doesn't necessarily have to be defined. Here's how it works. Typically, first you make the contribution to the fund. To establish your donor-advised fund, you make an irrevocable contribution of personal assets, which could include cash, stocks, real estate, and more. Your contribution is recorded as a donation, and the balance will be reflected in your donor-advised fund account. Donating highly appreciated assets like stock or real estate is popular in this type of strategy. Second, you receive an immediate tax deduction. When you contribute to your donor-advised fund, you may be eligible to claim an itemized tax deduction for federal and state income tax purposes. Because donor-advised fund sponsors are public charities, your donation is considered a tax-deductible charitable contribution. The amount of the deduction will depend on several factors, including the type of asset donated and how long you have owned it. This arrangement allows you to plan your gift so you can take the tax deduction when it makes the most sense for you, and to recommend grants to your favorite charitable organizations at any point in the future. Next, you make a grant recommendation. As the donor, you can advise the sponsoring organization on how to grant the money out to qualified charitable organizations. While the sponsor has legal control over the grants, they generally follow the donor's recommendation. You can structure it in a way that best meets your charitable goals. You can name your donor-advised fund anything you would like, appoint friends and family members to help you manage the responsibilities of the DAF, and design a legacy plan to determine what will be done with your DAF assets beyond your lifetime, which may include appointing successors or charitable beneficiaries. Then, you invest your funds for growth. You can recommend an investment strategy for your assets in your donor-advised fund account by selecting an allocation from the pre-approved investment offerings. The assets in your DAF are invested following your recommendation. Any investment growth is tax-free, giving you the potential to create even more philanthropic capital for grant making. Finally, you have the flexibility and privacy. DAFs offer flexibility to grant funds at your own pace without the need to decide immediately on the charities you want to support. They also provide the option to make your grants anonymously if desired. While DAFs offer many advantages such as tax efficiency, simplicity, and flexibility in giving, it's important for potential donors to weigh these benefits against the negatives to determine if a DAF is the right vehicle for their philanthropic goals. Some of the drawbacks to consider are lack of control. Once you contribute to a DAF, you relinquish legal control over the funds. While you can advise on the distribution of the grants from the fund, the sponsoring organization has the final say. Another drawback may be administrative fees. DAFs typically charge administrative fees, which can vary widely among sponsoring organizations. These fees cover the cost of managing the funds, including grant making, tax reporting, and legal compliance. Another potential drawback is limited investment options. The sponsoring organization typically offers a range of investment options for the funds, but these might not align with all the donors' preferences. Despite these drawbacks, DAFs are popular for several reasons, including their ease of administration, tax efficiency, and the ability to involve family members in philanthropy. They are offered by a variety of sponsors, including financial services companies, community foundations, and charitable entities associated with religious organizations or specific causes. It's important to work with your trusted advisor and tax accountant when building this strategy into your retirement plan, because when done correctly, it not only allows you an avenue to save on taxes, but also hit your philanthropic goals over time. That's the planning tip of the week. I'm Rishi Ghosh. We'll be right back.
You've worked hard to build up your retirement savings, but do you know how much you're paying in fees in your investment accounts? Hidden fees can eat away at your hard-earned dollars, and most investors don't know what they're actually paying in fees. I'm Anthony Stryker, and our team at Wheelhouse Advisory Group can give you a fee analysis so you know exactly where your money is going. Call us to learn how to keep extra costs from eating away at your retirement. Get your complimentary fee analysis today.
Welcome back to the Wheelhouse Retirement Show. We're back with Rishi Ghosh and Andrew Briesacker. We started the show today talking about how emotions can sometimes cause us to make the wrong decisions in retirement, but now we're going to switch gears and talk about a situation that you all see a lot with your clients. Tell us more.
And that typical situation, not for everyone, but it is a large majority of people that come through our doors, is what we like to describe an excessive amount of accounts, right? While people are in the growth phase of their life, they are always taught don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially the baby boomer generation. And oftentimes, like we can see on the screen, people will come to us with an enormous amount of accounts, right? There could be accounts from their personal brokerage accounts, to Fidelity accounts, to Schwab accounts, to Jones accounts, and there's nothing wrong with any of these companies, but oftentimes they have a lot of pieces doing a lot of different things and have no idea how to build it into one cohesive plan for their portfolio. So one of the things that we always look for is when is the right time to consolidate. And it's my personal belief that once you enter this 5-year time window of pre-retirement, moving into retirement, that is when you want to start thinking about taking some of these extra accounts or some of these accounts we've accumulated and really start building and planning for the next phase of your life.
Okay, so when you see investors coming in with old 401ks, what are their options, the choices that they have?
Yeah, there are numerous options out there, Amy, actually. And the first one is actually the simplest, but you just need to make sure you do your due diligence before making this decision. And basically, that's leaving your 401k with the current employer as long as that plan allows. There can be some advantages to this. Many times 401ks have much lower internal expenses and have cost-effective options for your investments. There's a lesser-known rule called the Rule of 55, which allows retirees that retire before the age of 59 and a half to take out withdrawals penalty tax-free. They still have to pay taxes on those withdrawals, but they avoid that 10% tax penalty. Some of the negatives could be that from time to time, you may not be able to take a loan out on it anymore, or you're certainly not going to be able to add to it anymore if you're not working with them. So you need to make sure you really understand what is involved in the plan upon making that decision.
You know, Amy, as a fiduciary advisor, it is our job here at this firm to help our clients weigh out these different choices and options for their 401ks, because there always are pros and cons to every decision. So the second bullet, or the number 2 option that people have, is to roll their money into an IRA. This is an increasingly popular option. The reason being, one of the biggest advantages of a self-directed IRA is you essentially now have the whole world to invest in. Oftentimes inside of 401ks, there's 20 to 25 different mutual fund choices. While some of them may be very good to help you hit your goals, when you're looking to tailor your plan a little bit more customized towards your family's goals, that is sometimes where a self-directed IRA might be a better option, and to roll that money over and have that opportunity. Obviously, a negative of a self-directed IRA could be potentially higher fees, right? If we're going to hire an advisor, or we're going to use some sort of automated plan to start investing the money, you might be paying higher fees than where your 401k is, which is why Wheelhouse, anytime we do any sort of pre-tax IRA to IRA, 401k to IRA movement, we always like to provide our clients with a comparison between the two accounts to make sure it's in their best interest.
Absolutely. And then option number 3 would be very similar to what we talked about in option number 1, and that would be roll it to a new employer. If you're moving to a new employer, once again, you really need to make sure you understand the plan. They may have cost-effective options, but as Rishi said, the options may be limited, and you may not have as much to choose from and not have that full breadth like you would have if you rolled your money over to an IRA. You still need to really make sure you understand the details of the plan. But the last option would be one that we very rarely, if ever, would recommend, and that's to cash out your 401k. And the reason that is because obviously, even if you're over the age of 59 and a half, if you have a large lump sum in your 401k, even if you want to get it out and start paying taxes or convert it to Roths like we talk about a lot, there's a lot of taxes that are going to be doing that. It may push you in a much higher tax bracket. So even in that case, any of these options, you need to make sure, if you're not familiar with the proper way to fill out paperwork with these types of transactions, you probably need to be consulting with an advisor to make sure that you don't cause yourself some type of undue tax treatment by accidentally cashing it out. But in many cases, that's not going to be an option, or not something we would look at, because there's so many tax advantage options to go with, like moving it into a current plan or moving it into an IRA.
Thank you so much to both of you, and thank you for joining us today. If you're looking for a plan to prevent emotions from dictating your retirement future, don't delay. Reach out by phone or on the web to get started planning for your ideal retirement future. For Rishi Ghosh, Andrew Briesacker, and the team at Wheelhouse Advisory Group, I'm Amy Sharp. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time.